Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I take a call on behalf of New Zealand First in the Conservation Natural Heritage Protection Bill, and it's a great pleasure to rise to discuss these issues of endangered species immediately after the North Shore MP Maggie Barry. And in that regard, this is very much about putting in place new penalties, increased penalties, to get around what has been somewhat of a problem over many years in terms of international trafficking of endangered and rare species. And looking back in some of the news reports in the last decade, we will all recall instances where, for instance, a German tourist was caught with Northland green geckos smuggled in his underwear as he was attempting to leave Auckland Airport. Where another German tourist in 2010 tried to smuggle 44 live geckos and skinks out of the country. Obviously, the Germans have something about our geckos that they'd like to get a hold of them. There was another instance where two Czech botanists were convicted in 2004 attempting to smuggle 363 wild plants, including 93 endemic orchids. And the list goes on, and it is often the case that this is being done for commercial gain and for commercial interest. And it is interesting that Interpol internationally estimates that the smuggling of wildlife, for instance, around the world is estimated to be in the order of $10 to $20 billion. The trade in wildlife smuggling is $10 to $20 billion by Interpol. Now, we're only a small tip of the iceberg because we're at the end of the earth. We're an island nation, and therefore it is far more difficult compared to those countries perhaps closer to Europe or Asia, where there are cross borders and that sort of thing. But in our situation, we do have some very, very rare species which are unique to this country. And some of you last night may have had an opportunity to have caught on TV1 the Wild New Zealand documentary, which was on Fiordland, and it showed that wonderful area of New Zealand, our largest national park, and it showed the likes of the New Zealand kea, a unique parrot, unique to New Zealand, which again are sought after around the world and which are highly prized. And it's those sorts of species and many others that we have in this country that have ended up uniquely New Zealand birds and animals and fauna and flora that we have to ensure that we protect. I commend Jackie Dean for bringing this private member's bill to the House in relation to increasing the penalties and making them much more substantial than they were in the past, increasing the likes of some from 1 up to 5 years, and that's a significant increase to go from 1 to 5 years for those who have committed offences which are for commercial gain or reward. And similarly putting those figures up to $300,000 penalties or $20,000 per day similarly is sending a very strong message to those around the world, or indeed any New Zealanders who might wish to participate in any illicit trade of any flora or fauna. It is also pleasing to see that this legislation does take into account that sometimes it is not done for commercial gain. It may have just been done, as other speakers have mentioned, for some reason that they were not fully apparent of, or which they did carelessly, but still where they should be penalised for having not taken due care and regard for the native natural reserve. In that instance, people can, under this bill, be sentenced to community work, and again, that is a good situation that is sensible, that some people who have perhaps offended, who perhaps do not require a financial penalty but should be made to learn from their mistake, can be subjected to community work to make amends for their wrongdoings. In this respect, Mr Speaker, New Zealand First is supporting this bill, but we do echo the comments of some other speakers that while this is very good to be increasing the penalties and making the regime and the governance of our flora and fauna much stricter and sending a stronger message to those who do not abide by our laws, sending a strong message. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, we are very mindful that the conservation reserve, that the conservation estate is under threat. We hear figures bandied around by the national government who say that there's as much money, if not more, in there today as there was a few years ago. But we have to remember, Mr. Speaker, that we have a growing population. We also have growing numbers of tourists coming to this country. The conservation estate is under increasing pressure. There are increasing numbers using our conservation reserve, and as a result we have to be upping the ante, not just trying to tread water with the conservation reserve. And therefore, in that respect, by upping the ante in terms of the penalties, that is going part of the way to helping protect our conservation reserve. But at the same time, we cannot forget that the basis of this country and our supposed 100% pure image, and also the basis of our economy being a clean, green, agricultural-based economy, is also dependent on us having a very good, clean environment. And the environment is absolutely, without doubt, the jewel in the crown of New Zealand's economy. And if we let that suffer in any way, then the rest of this economy could well suffer. So I just do say to the Minister, and we mentioned it before, Minister Amy Adams, that going hand in hand with this bill, there is a responsibility on the part of the Minister to ensure that other aspects of the conservation estate and the environment are equally protected and safeguarded. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ian